Good day, folks. Welcome back to DragonBlogger.com. I'm Ronald Demon Killer Smith, and for your viewing pleasure today, I have the unboxing and product review for the Deepcool Pangu computer case. Alright folks, let's go ahead and get to the unboxing. I've already set the box, as you can see, to where I can easily access the area that I'm going to open up, which I always go for the bottom first. The reason for that is because usually when a computer case is packed away inside of one of these shipping boxes, they tend to pack them upside down. So this just makes it a little bit easier for me to access. And when I open it up, styrofoam wants to actually let go of it. One thing I have to say right off the bat is that is quite a tight fit for the styrofoam and the cardboard. That's not a bad thing. Now the way that Deepcool packs this case inside of its box is they actually pack it face down. No, that's a face up. There's actually, normally you might expect it to where the top of the case would actually be at the front or the top of the box, but such is not the case for this particular unit. Not necessarily a bad thing, because it probably helps a little bit with the structural integrity, keeping things arranged inside of the package, etc. and so forth. Everything seems to be pretty kosher as far as the quality goes. We don't have any missing bay covers or anything like that. Now this is the V2 version. It's basically the Pangu version 2. This is the side window edition, and what you get with it, you get the regular case, but instead of the mesh lining here on the top and the front bezel being blue, which is actually a really cool blue, by the way, it actually matches this table cover that I'm using almost perfectly. However, it's kind of the blue that you see inside of a USB 3.0 port. But anyway, on this version you have a silverish gray instead of the blue, and you get a side window on the left panel, which is a smoke colored panel, or a smoke colored acrylic window. It's actually pretty nice, very sturdy, and not too thick but not too thin either. So let's go ahead and open her up. Alright, so to go ahead and open up the case, you'll notice that the side panels here have 4 case screws. They're thumb screw style screws, and they're actually pretty cool. They're a hard plastic. Get that autofocus going a little bit here. Okay. And it's a ribbed plastic. And they encase the metal screws here. It's actually becoming a bit of a standard on a lot of cases, and it's a very, very snug fit, as you can see there. I imagine that in order to take that screw out, if you wanted to modify that, you could, but it'd be a royal pain in the neck. But it's nice to have these type of thumb screws in order to be able to have a couple of different options, and they're actually very comfortable with removing them as well. Okay, so on the right panel, you know, it's just straight up flat black, not a big deal. See that? It's nice, very sturdy, and basically a standard gauge of thickness cold rolled steel. It's also been powder coated black. And then this is the left panel. Notice that the like I said, the window is a smoke color. It's almost a black, almost, and it has the protective film on the one side. It's, as I mentioned earlier, it's not very thick, but it's not too thin either. So you actually have a lot to work with there. And again, you know, this is cold rolled steel, powder coated black, and it's really nice that they go the extra mile to powder coat the inside of the panel, not just the outside. And you'll notice that here on the window itself, you have these little posts that stick off of here, and that's actually molded into the window itself. That's actually part of the window. The way that, and I'll actually take some photographs of this part, but you'll see that this screw, and there are 8 of them throughout the window, but you'll notice that those screws actually screw into these little plastic studs. Now these kind of look similar to the ones that are used for mounting fans, case fans to, say, the side panel or the exhaust ports on the back, you know, whatever. But these are actually very different. They have a square shape to them on the other side. The holes that are actually punched through these side panels are a square shape, and they fit in there perfectly, nice and snug. And then the screw is then put through the hole on this side, and it tightens up, holding the window to the side panel and to the stud on the other side. Now if you get the standard V2 edition, then you'll have 2 of those panels like the right panel. It'll be, you know, just flat on both sides, and you'll have a blank canvas, which it's a really nice option to have. It's actually very, very useful, especially if you're a computer modder, which, as I have been doing with my reviews, I'm going to go over a lot of different things, basically every possible aspect I can of the case. And if I don't cover it in this video, I will definitely be covering it in the actual written portion of the article. This is a full review, it's not just a video. Now, looking at one of the really nicest features of this case, this top here, this is where the exhaust fans go. Now, if you look on the inside, you'll notice that it's recessed, so you can fit some fans in there. You know, stick a couple of 120 millimeter fans in there for exhaust. Now, this right here, it's a nice little pressure lock system. Now, the way that this filter is designed has these little plastic hooks at the back, and then it has these here at the front, which go into these pressure locks. There are 2 of them, and then the back, it hooks on that lip there. Now, the way that the front is designed is almost exactly the same. It's just a little bit more of a snug fit than on the top. Now, that's not to say that if you wanted to, you couldn't actually switch out the front and the top, because you actually can. It's pretty nice. They give you a little bit of universal capability there. And the fun thing about that is, say you want to have the Deepcool logo still on the computer, but you don't want it sticking out on the front because you don't want to block the fans or whatever. You just want a smoother, cleaner look on the front. You actually have that option right out of the box. And there are a lot of options right out of the box that you're going to see here in just a moment. But let's go ahead and pop these back off. They're actually very easy to remove, as you can see. And they have a tendency to mount rather flushly in there, but you'll see that there's plenty of space in here for your fans. You can fit standard size fans, and you can put them here on this underbelly or here on the top. The nice thing about that is, say you wanted to have a radiator here on the inside for liquid cooling, and then have the exhaust fans pulling the hot air through the top so that it actually exhausts the air and cools the radiator. You could do that here on the top without any issue. You have plenty of space to work with that. You also have a really nice sturdy steel construction. So this honeycomb mesh, if you want to leave it, you can, but if you want to get rid of it, you also have the opportunity to do so without really compromising any of the integrity of the structure. Now, as far as removing the bezels go, it really couldn't be any easier. You literally just pop it off like that. And then for the top here, you again just pop it off like that. Now on the inside, you'll have to maneuver the cables a little bit, the wiring, so that it actually fits through there. And in a way, I'm kind of providing you a little bit of a how-to, so that if you were to purchase one of these cases, you would know what you're doing right off the bat. Now, another really nice feature is to add to the structural integrity. They put this steel bar going across the top of the 5 1/4 cage, and it's very, very sturdy, cold rolled steel. It's really nice. Holds this case together very, very well. But you also have plenty of room to move wires throughout here if you want to. And you have this lip right here. That's where they put the wiring through by default when they package the cases and ship them off to you. And then you have a lot of other options as far as what you can do with that. You know, if you want to, you can run them behind the cages here, or you can run them through the holes that are actually punched and rolled. These are cold rolled edges, so you don't have to worry about sharp edges here. You can run the wires through there. You have the big one down here for the power supply cables to run through. Now on to the next step. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of a closer examination of the top and front bezels and the filters that go along with them. As you can see here, the plastic that they use is a nice, smooth, soft touch. This is actually some of the nicest soft touch that I've ever felt, and the only thing I can really compare it with is the soft touch film that Corp created for use on automotive products and whatever. As far as the mesh goes, this stuff is actually really cool. You can go ahead and flip it over here. You see that it's very thin. This is actually the same kind of mesh that is on the filters and on the 5 1/4 bay covers here. And it's the same kind that runs on the front as it does on the top. Now, it's actually easier to remove this from the front than it is the top. But it's actually very easy to do. As you can see, I can do this with my fingers. I don't even have to have any tools. But you want to be very careful with it because you don't want to bend it too much or bend it too many times and cause it to end up breaking. This top one here is a little bit trickier because of the way that you got to manipulate it. But as you can see, just take that right off of there. And see, there's plenty of room in there. One really nice cool thing about that is also they give you a lot of these little slits going along. And it's the same on the front as it is on the top. Again, as you can see here, this is the top bezel. And the way that they designed it is basically if you want to, you can go ahead and run some LED strips in here. You can create a custom form a piece of acrylic to match one of these, and the rest of the pieces, and replace these mesh pieces with the acrylic or metal or wood or whatever you want to do. Basically, I know a lot of people have been doing really cool wood mods for a long time now. That's basically becoming a really big thing in the modding community. But of course you have lots of different options, and as I showed you, it's actually very easy to pop this out. Now putting it back on, not quite as easy, but still fairly easy to do. You just want to make sure to get all your tabs in there, push them down, and you want to lock this top one down first, of course, and then just start from here. You can bend it back real easy. It's not quite so easy with this last one. You just get your fingernail in there and there you go. And I mean, like I said, you have plenty of options when you think about it. But another thing to know on the top bezel here, you have two USB 2.0s, two USB 3.0s, a headset jack, which also has the LED here for, I can only imagine, one of these is for power, one of these is for the hard drive activity. And it looks like that one's actually missing. Oh, nope, it popped out. Gotta replace that hot glue or do something with it. You can see that little guy right there. It's kind of funny that it popped out. I was like, wait a minute, what the crap, what's going on there? But not a big deal. I mean, it's a really easy fix on that. You ain't gonna worry about that right now. But you have the hard drive activity and power LEDs. You have a microphone jack right here as well. Nice big power button. Nice little reset button. It's kind of funny because the way they designed that, it looks like the registration logo, for like a registered trademark or whatever. But the way that these affix to the case, you have these little plastic push clips. This is something that's been going on in computer cases for decades now, so I mean, it's not like it's anything super abnormal or anything. But they also give you these here that if you wanted to do some modifications to your computer, but you also wanted to put screws in here to make sure that nobody accidentally or all too easily popped this top off or the front, then you could do that. You know, you have options. You can thread those and actually put screws in there if you wanted to. And then you'll notice that the wiring on the top here, this is for the front panel connections, obviously.
Duh.
You'll notice that the wiring is pretty much all nice black. The USB 3 here is a full dual USB 3.0 internal connector. The only offshoot from the coloring is with the audio connections here. And they give you AC97 audio and the HD audio. Have your USB 2.0s here, and then your front panel connectors. It's pretty much all black, white, really nice, easy to read right there. Okay, and kind of funny, I've been noticing a lot of computer case manufacturers here in the last few years have more and more been doing this. It's nice big old PCB here. It's got pretty much everything right there on it. It's not to say that you can't modify this whole thing and customize it to however you wanted to, because you really could. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could actually mod this to fit a Bulgin switch in there. And if you don't know what a Bulgin switch is, just go ahead and Google search it. It's actually extremely cool power switch that's it's supposed to be vandal resistant. Basically, nobody can really screw with your computer with one of those switches in there. And it's spelled B-U-L-G-I-N. It's Bulgin switch. Some people probably pronounce it Bulgin, I don't know, but it just doesn't sound right to me. But anyway, you have a couple of screws holding these puppies in. I noticed this one's actually missing a screw right here, but that's not really a big deal.
Okie dokie.
And you have one that's holding in it on this end. This end is not very loose, but I'm sure that I probably have a screw somewhere where I can fix that if I decide to.
Yeah!
And probably do that when I re-hot glue that LED in there. Now, as far as the 5 1/4 bays go, these are the covers. This is actually becoming pretty much a standard with the mesh ones anymore. Notice it has the cold rolled lip there, and you have the tabs, the internal tabs on the front bezel itself. Now these also have a nice little foam filter. These are kind of a pain to clean, I'll be honest with you, but your likelihood of needing to clean that is extremely small. Very, 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 very limited. And you have 2 of those. You have on the Pangu V2 case, regardless of which one you get, it has 2 external 5 1/4s and 1 internal. Now onto the fan filters. These are just for the top and the front, and there are other fan filters in the case. We'll get to that in just a moment. They're a little bit different. Now you flip these over. These puppies are identical. I mean, there's literally only one difference between the 2 of them. And that's this mesh on the front one has a recession here in the steel mesh, and they put a Deepcool logo in there, which they have that protective plastic on there too, which is really nice, so you don't have to worry about it being scratched up when you first receive your case. But anyway, that's the only difference between these. As you can see, when I was messing with it just a moment ago, you could actually put the one for the top on the front if you wanted to. And then it's just the shiny, heavy-duty mesh, the honeycomb mesh plastic. You can modify that if you wanted to, which a lot of people probably will. But, you know, to each their own, basically. And if you look real closely here, let's get nice and close. Alright, see how it looks like there's a cross hatching in there? There's actually a screen in there. And that's your filter. So you don't have to worry about any of that kind of mess. When you go to clean this, it's actually going to be extremely easy. You can just take a Swiffer or something and just right over it, and it'll pull that dust right off of there. It's not a big deal. And you can either leave this as it is, or if you want to, you can, you know, remove this. Not that difficult to do. As you can see here, go ahead and pop these tabs up a little bit. See, I'm literally doing this in seconds. It's so extremely easy to do. Again, I remind you, be careful. And I just grab this little tab here, pull that right off, and then you have your little screen filter. And if you want to, you can just pitch that to the side, and you still have this. It's nice, beautiful. Alright. And it's like that for both of these filters, as you can see here. So you have that for the front and the top. Not a big deal. Gives you a lot of options. This here is the other filter that I was mentioning. Not sure, but I think that this is actually a plastic mesh. Kind of feels like it. It doesn't really feel like a metal. Feels very, very fragile, but not too brittle. The way that the filter mounts on this part of the case, obviously this is the bottom here, and you'll see the case piece. It's pretty easy distinction, but the way that it mounts on here is it has these little tabs, and it has them all the way around, but then it also has this little screw here to keep it on there. Now, chances are you probably will leave it on there by default if you're just going to throw your components in there and have at it. But if you're like me, or pretty much any other enthusiast or modder, then you're most likely going to take that screw out of there and pitch that to the side. Now, again, you have the holes punched through for your fan filtering. You can get rid of those, you know, cut them out using a rotary tool like a Dremel or something, and not have any real concern with the structural integrity. It's not going to cause any major disturbances to the force or anything. So the next part here on the bottom is the case feet. These are actually really nice considering the majority of the cases that are on this portion of the market, this price point. These are a nice heavy-duty plastic, but they're also low set, as you can see, and they have the nice foam here on the very bottom of them, and this foam actually has a really good grip. So if you put a lot of components in here, you weigh it down, this thing's pretty much not going anywhere. I mean, I even have a hard time moving it around regardless of whether I have anything in it or not. It's just because these have such a really nice grip to them, and they're held in there by screws. Not a big deal. These are the same kind of screws that you see these here. Those screws hold on the bottom 3.5 drive bay. You have a middle one here which has these pressure locks with the slide rails, and these are screwed on. It's the same kind of plastic that's used on the hex mesh for the filters. And then in addition to that, you also have 6 of these pretty little bad boys. Now the way that these drive sleds are designed is, you notice that there are mounting holes for the 2.5 drives, so you can mount an SSD in there or a laptop hard drive if you wanted to. And the way that these are designed, you have the slide locks, so just go ahead and pop that open. They have the metal tabs here, which have rubber grommets right there. You put your drive in there, and you close it up. You know, obviously if you're doing a 2.5 drive, then you don't have to worry about that. You just put the drive on there, hold it with one hand this way, put the screws in there, screw them in with the other hand. And you have 6 of these total. Now this one here, this is the components box, the accessories that you get with it. So you can go ahead and pop that out a little bit, because there are these holes there that hold it in. Just set that to the side. Grab my knife again. Cut this tape. And these will get you some nice high-res images to go in the written portion of the review as well. So keep an eye out for that. Set that to the side. You have the setup guide, installation manual. Now it also says user guide right there. But you'll notice that this is in both Chinese. See, Chinese. And on the flip side, English. So you also have your warranty card, quality certificate, which this one looks like it got stamped, but can't really tell because it's kind of worn off there. Okay, this side, on the Chinese side, it actually does have the quality control stamp. And it also tells you the date that it was passed. This one was May 22nd of 2014. So this one's been sitting somewhere pretty for a little while, but not a big deal. I mean, it's only early July, right? Anyway, the instructions are actually very easy to understand, and I'll give you a nice little scan of that in the remainder of the images so you have more of an idea of what we're dealing with there. Now, as far as this goes, open up the bag here. You have your handy dandy, extremely tiny and thin zip ties. They're nice and black, nice glossy black. And one other thing about this guide is not only is it a user guide, but on top of that, it actually tells you what the accessories are supposed to be that come with it. Okay, so for those cable ties we have 10, and then we have 9 standoffs, and those are in a nice jet black. And then we have 13 of the M3 5mm screws, have 12 of the 6-pound 32s. These are 10mm in length, whereas the others are 5mm. We have the standoff fastener, which I'll show you what that is here in a second. That's actually something that I've never seen in a computer case before. It is really, really cool, very useful tool. But then you have 4 pieces of the 6-pound 32 screws for mounting your power supply, which those are pretty standard. You can get those with pretty much any computer case. If you don't, then I would be questioning something, because those are the same threaded screws that you need for mounting hard drives, generally speaking. Now, most of these components are in this little guy here. I went ahead and opened up the baggie. Not very easy to do with one hand, so I just paused it and got back to it after I sorted all this stuff out. But there are a couple of things in here, well actually 3 things that they do not mention being in the accessories pack, but they're in here. Obviously we have the zip ties here again. We have that little tool that I was telling you about. On this end, it's a Phillips head. A little hard to focus on there. Okay. And then it's knurled. And then on this end, especially designed to fit these nice handy dandy standoffs, so that you can then take one of those. Let's see. Let's go ahead and put that right in there, twist it a little bit, okay. And then take this. And there you go. Nice snug fit. Okay, next up we have screws. There are the 10mm screws. There are the power supply screws. And then they also give you a speaker. And then this here, some cases usually have them installed already. But if you look here on the back, find this little slot and see how it has the hole here for the screw. But anyway, you just put that through there, then screw it in, and then you have the ability to lock your case. Now, why they left it the way that they did, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. Maybe you'll install it, maybe you won't. But the third part that they didn't mention in the user guide are these screws right here. Now, some of you may know what they're for, some of you may not. There you go. You get 2 of these fans in this case, but they're using 2 different types of screws to be mounted to the case. Where the rear is using the standard threaded screws, the self-tapping screws. This one here in the front is using these. And they provide you an extra set so that if you want to install another fan, it goes right in there. Okay. Now it's a bit of a snug fit, but it's a really nice thread too. So if you install a fan on there, it's not really going anywhere. But they're the full post screws. They give you full pressure holding that whole fan in there from the outside all the way in. And the nice thing about that is it also helps to reduce vibration. Now, as far as these fans go, they're a fairly basic design. You can see that they're a clear acrylic and that they have LEDs in them. It's a nice bright but not too bright blue. And the fans, they have a sticker on the back of them that say pretty much absolutely nothing. It's just a blank sticker, and I'll show you here. It's easier to see it on the back one. See, it's just a plain white sticker. There's no information saying what kind of a model number, serial number, or whatever. Usually if you have something like that, you can actually look up and see what the rated CFM, DBA, all that is. But I can tell you, and I'll show you here in a moment, but these are actually a very quiet fan. but they're also ones that don't push very much air. So while they're nice for decorative purposes, I do not recommend them for actual cooling of your system. Okay, so don't mind the octopus cables here, you know, just don't even pay attention to that. I've got my handy dandy little ultra power supply here ready to go for a little bit of basic testing so I can show you the fans. Got it hooked up here with what I like to refer to as my power key. Anyway, let's go ahead and show you that. And see the way that these fans are designed, they have two different power connectors. They have 2 pins in the standard 4-pin Molex connector, but they also use the 3-pin standard fan connector, like for a motherboard or a fan controller, what have you. And the way that these are designed, you can use either or, but it's going to draw the same power regardless. I mean, you can even have both connections hooked up. It's still going to give you the same speed, the same CFM quality, etc. and so forth. So let's go ahead and flip the switch on the power supply here. As you can see, it's a nice bright blue. It actually looks brighter in the video than what it is. Almost seems like a cool white, but as you can tell, there is a pretty decent blue hue to it. And we can get you up nice and close. See, it's very, very quiet. And take the power supply bag here. And you see that it's not even strong enough to move this very, very thin, flimsy plastic bag. So, I mean, there is a noticeable amount of air that comes out of there, but it's not really enough to matter to any enthusiast. You're more likely going to replace these fans. One little other nice feature about the structure of this case, see how it has a nice big opening right there? This front, right out of the box, is designed so you can affix a radiator in there. So say if you wanted to go liquid cooling, but you don't want to have a whole lot of drives, you can actually pop out both of these 3.5 cages and put a radiator in there, a dual 120, and be able to have a lot of options for your liquid cooling capability. Excuse me. On top of that, if you just wanted to pop that out and just put a single 120 rad in there, you actually have the capability of doing that as well, which of course gives you the option to still have your 3 hard drives here or solid state drives, whatever, and then you have space for 3 5.25s right there. See how easy this pops in and out as well? I love that. It's just super easy. And one other thing that I want to mention here, there's actually a warning label on here, and the reason that they tell you not to bend it is because once you break those arrows off, if you want to use this drive sled for anything, it'll work, but nowhere even remotely close to as well as it was intended to. And in some cases it may not even work at all. Now, one other thing here is the pop tabs here for the 5.25 bay. You'll notice on a lot of cases they have the twist pressure locks, and you know, for some cases those are actually convenient, they're well designed, but there are a lot of others, especially some of the high-end ones, where it's just plain flat out annoying. The reason for that is because a lot of times you'll twist it and then the thing will just pop right out. Well, if you're wanting to actually use those, that can be very frustrating because it's usually annoying just trying to put them back in there. It can be a real big hassle. But the way that these are designed is actually they have, let's see that there? Get that focus. Okay. There's actually a little bit of a pressure tab that you push with your finger, and see it actually has a hinge. It's pre-stamped, punched into the steel drive cage, and then here's the plastic component of it. And you have the metal studs here. These are the posts that actually hold the drive in, and here's the pressure switch. Now to lock the drive in, you just slide your drive in there, push it in. It's not going anywhere. But again, you want to pop that back out, put some pressure on there, and then pull. And see, here's the actual lock for it. And you get 3 of those. You don't get one on the right side, you just get those on the left side. And it's actually becoming pretty standard procedure for generally all OEMs. But you still have your holes here so you can put the screws in there and lock them in on this side. Now, as far as the motherboard tray goes, you'll see that it has this really nice large, I mean very large cutout right here. I actually have fairly decent sized hands, and this, I'll give you the actual measurements for it in the written portion of the article, but it fits pretty much any motherboard design. So you have plenty of room in here for your liquid cooling brackets and what have you. Now, the motherboard tray itself, you have literally quite a lot of options to run your wires. And you know, they give you plenty of the zip ties, but they don't give you near as many as the quantity required to use every single one of these. But you don't have to use all of those if you don't want to. You have plenty of options to run your SATA cables through here, or whatever you're wanting to do, run LED wires or whatnot. And one other really cool feature about this, see, follow my finger here, see this screw hole? Yeah, I kind of just gave it away there. These are actually screw holes. They're pre-threaded, and so if you wanted to actually put, say, a water cooling reservoir or something there, you already have holes that are ready to go for you to custom mount whatever it is. Or, you know, you can make whatever kind of pieces you wanted for that. You can put custom brackets for LEDs to illuminate the inside of your case, or, you know, whatever. And you pretty much have hardly any limits to what you can do with those. And those kind of holes, they have 4 here on the bottom, and they have the 2 on the top. And I mean, you can even put motherboard standoffs in there if you want to, but you don't really have to. And you'll notice that here on the bottom drive cage, you have 2 more screws holding it to the motherboard tray. And then on the middle, there's nothing, but there are some holes there if you wanted to, you know, use twist ties or whatever to run your wires on there. But then here on the 5 1/4 cage, it's actually riveted. So the 5 1/4 cage by default is not removable, but if you wanted to drill out those rivets and customize it however you wanted to, you actually can. Really nice thing about that part though is that you see you have the removable plates here, but then you have screw holes, and these are threaded, so if you want to, you can take these rivets out. You can actually de-rivet the 5 1/4 cage and then just screw it back in, so you still have structural integrity and nothing to worry about as far as that goes. Now on the bottom here of the motherboard tray, you have a nice punch out there that's recessed from the other side for the power supply, and this one here and this one here are, and that they're designed to apply pressure to the power supply and keeping it in alignment and away from the motherboard. The cool thing about that is that also gives you a little bit of extra room, so if you needed to run, say, USB cables or LED wires or whatever behind the power supply and still be able to get it in there and have plenty of room to work with, you have the option to do that. In the written portion of the article, I'll give you a more detail in depth set of measurements and all that as far as what you can do with all of this stuff, you know, how much room you have to work with. As you can see, there's a lot of room in there, and you have this little pop out here that basically it helps to support the quality, the integrity of the motherboard tray, which of course is always helpful. But then you flip this around, get a little bit of a better look at it. And it pretty much says it all right there. And it's just a little guide to help you along. The entire motherboard tray has these designated engravings on every single stud hole. So you'll know exactly what motherboard type to be installing the standoffs for, exactly where at throughout the entire motherboard tray. And it, as you can see here, actually supports a pretty hefty amount of motherboards. You get plenty of studs, the standoffs for the motherboard tray, and so you can mount the motherboard. You get enough on here for, or in the accessories box, for pretty much any motherboard that you're going to install. But there are two that are pre-installed, and you'll notice these are the kind that have that little groove on the top. Now the nice thing about those, and yes, these are removable, but the nice thing about those is that they are designed so that when you put the motherboard in there, it's not going to slide all over the place. But Deepcool loves you, so they're going ahead and throwing in a couple of those kind of standoffs so that you don't have a whole big headache and get frustrated with trying to install stuff in the case. Looking here at the top of the motherboard tray, you have a nice big cutout right there, so you can run fan wires, whatever. There's another one right here. And then of course the one that we already looked at earlier for the top panel wires. Now here's the other side of that little area where the power supply mounts to. Goes right in here. You also get 4 rubber pads, and yes, those are actual rubber. They're not rubberized foam or whatever. They're actually really nice rubber. And then this is something else that I really like about this case, actually I pretty much love about this case, is you get every single one of these is an actual cover that is completely removable and replaceable. You know, you can do what you want with them. They're not the punch out type like a lot of the cheaper cases have. Now, as far as removing these thumb screws, obviously they're put in there by machine, so they're not going to come out very easy right off the bat. You want to loosen those up with a screwdriver. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that just goes to show that they're wanting to ensure that when they ship this to you, it's all going to be intact. Next up is you have the little rubber grommets here in the holes, so that you can run liquid cooling through there if you need to or you want to. Or you can run other wires through there if you wish to, which is a really cool feature, because you never know until you actually think about it what you're going to be doing with that. But if you don't want to do that, you can actually pop these things out. They're nice soft rubber. You can put a power switch there, or a say a USB port, or a external SATA port, or pretty much whatever you want to right there. You have two of them that you can do that with. If you want to, you can even just go ahead and cut those out. You know, just cut a line on there and make that one big long oval shape, or whatever you want to do with it. Like I said, you have a pretty good amount of options. There's plenty to choose from there. And putting that back in there, because it's a nice soft rubber, it actually goes in really nice, easy. Okay, so one thing I almost forgot to mention is the perforations on these expansion plate covers. It's really nice to have that, so you can actually have some breathing room in there, as well as have it nice and decorative. It's, as you can see, it's actually colored to match the rest of the case. It appears that, yeah, they're painted, they're not powder coated, but that's not a big deal at all. Now, as far as motherboard installation or anything of that nature goes, I've already pre-installed the standoffs, as you can see here. Now, installing the I/O cover, it is a snug fit, but doesn't provide you too much resistance. So, generally speaking, it's a nice snug fit. I have a motherboard here that installing this pretty much couldn't be easier, especially if you use those pre-installed standoffs. Just line it up here. You just line it up with those pre-installed standoffs, and they have just enough on them to lock into the holes. And then you just take the mounting screws, and we're not going to use many, we'll just go ahead and use 4, but so take note to the fact that I do not have a CPU in there. However, when you actually have one installed, it's not going to be any higher above this little bracket here on the socket. And you know, it's like that for whatever CPU you're installing There's that same general level of height regardless of whether it's Intel or AMD or even what socket. Now, the extra bonus as to what I was getting at, the reason for me setting it up this way, is because when you install a CPU heatsink, like say a fan-based one, an air cooler, any of the standard air coolers are going to fit in there. The big question is, how does it fare with the large tower style heat sinks? Well, I just so happen to have another Deepcool product, the GamerStorm Assassin CPU cooler. Let's go ahead and open this up real quick, and then I'll set it on the motherboard and I'm going to show you something. Okay, so standard mounting for the GamerStorm Assassin, as you can see here, it has a stamp in the top plate. Now the way that they designed it is so that it can be mounted either way, like this. Okay. So the standard way to mount it is like so. Now if you wanted to, you can do that, and then you have the air passing this way. However, sometimes people might want to instead mount it to where it's like that. Now, one issue that I have to mention is, as you can see, the tops of the heat pipes do not really cause any issue as far as the case itself goes. So say you want to install a standard side panel, just a good old flat one. You can do that without any issue. Not a big deal. Okay. Where you actually find issue when you go to install a windowed side panel. Watch the Assassin. See, it moves a little bit. Maybe you can get a better look. If you watch. You see it jar at all? Okay. Reason for that is because these studs hit the heat pipes. So if you're going to use one of the taller heat sinks and you still want to use this window that comes with it, don't mount the heat sink vertically. Do it standard. Mount it horizontally and you'll be fine. Because when you have it like that, let's go ahead and set this side panel on here. See, here's the stud. It's not hitting anything. It's a nice big open space there. See, it just slides. real easy. They provide you with a lot of room, but you also have to be mindful of what cooler you're going to be using, how you're going to have it mounted in there, etc. Now, as far as that hole on the back of the motherboard tray, like I mentioned before, there's lots and lots of room. See, this is a Intel Core 2 system, so, or Core 2 based motherboard. So you have the 4 holes right there, but then if you're going to use one of the more current motherboards, it's likely going to be over here and whatnot. But you have plenty of space to move around with. And you can see, you look through here, you can see the motherboard right there. So you have to be mindful of that when you're putting ties through there. So if you want to use any metal based ties, I don't recommend it right there unless you get the ones that have the nice thick plastic wrapping around it. But probably just best to use a vinyl zip tie in that spot. Final word on this case is, you know, it's not perfect. If I could put it on a rating scale of 10, I would say it's probably, say, a 9.6. I honestly don't think that any of the cons put enough issue on it to even remotely closely offset the positives. I honestly have to say I am really thrilled about this case. I'm very honored to have had the opportunity to review it. And if you have any questions whatsoever, definitely ask me any inquiries whatsoever. I want your feedback. So if you're watching this video, if you're checking out the review, let me know what you think. You're not just dealing with me, you're not just dealing with Dragon Blogger, but you're especially dealing with Deepcool themselves. They are extremely interested in putting this in your hands for a very good price. They want to expand their market as much as humanly possible. They're working right now to get very soon a extension to the North American market. So United States and Canada. They'll also be working with Central and South America and plenty of other countries. Currently they are dealing with a lot of distributors, and we're going to start seeing a lot of Deepcool products start hitting the North American market very soon. So keep an eye on this case. I highly recommend it. Love this case more than even the one that I'm currently using, which is a Cooler Master case. It's a really nice one, but this is so much better. I can't wait to put my components in here and see how much better it fares in here. But all in all, love this case. Highly recommend it. You can get your hands on it. Definitely do, especially for the price point that it's at. As always, folks, I'm Ronald Demon Killer Smith for DragonBlogger.com, and always remember that I want to know what you want to know about.